I was attractive and I had such, such luck, I guess, with it. And so then I found that I still couldn't make friends. Like I still couldn't be close to those people. I had a romantic partner, but we weren't really friends, which
Yeah.
was wild. And I didn't think it was a requirement. And so I struggled with making friends up until my late 30s, where I started to get some support and help.
What if the truth came in a gel cap and we could just pop it in our mouths and forget about it? Well, it doesn't. And we can't. But we can laugh in the face of reality while plotting our survival. Welcome to the Truth Tastes Funny podcast. I am your host, Hirsch Redpun. And if my guests can handle the truth, so can you. Open wide, folks. Here it comes.
My guest today on Truth Tastes Funny is Coach Lee Hopkins. Coach Lee helps late diagnosed autistic adults and introverted professionals build real relationships without masking or burning out. As the founder of Patterns of Possibility, Lee supports individuals and organizations in creating connection through authenticity, boundaries, and conscious conversation. He's here not only to talk about Patterns of Possibility, but about some other stuff that he's got going on. And of course, we're going to dive into his background and how he found his calling. Lee, welcome to Truth Tastes Funny.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Hirsch. I'm glad to be here.
It's great to have you. It's great to have you. So tell me a little bit about what's going on in the background there. For those who are not watching on YouTube, you need to get over to YouTube and just tell me what's in the slats there. What's going on?
Oh, over here we have some really, really expensive looking vines that I've got from Amazon, and they're
Uh-huh.
fake, but they're hanging out over here. So I love plants and I have quite a bit of them. I have a few pothos, golden pothos. So these ones are real that are behind me. I'll tilt my camera just a little bit so you
Oh,
can
nice.
see.
Yeah.
I have quite a bit of them and I have some in the other room as well. And they're just super easy to grow. And they really just bring life to me, I love
Yeah.
them.
Well, it's interesting because it does affect your mood, right? It
Hmm.
does, having something living in the room, you know, that is it could be plants. My wife works in an eco-friendly environment. It's a foundation, so their whole building is like they grow their own vegetables there, and they grow. So everywhere you turn are living things,
Yeah,
and it's really fascinating. So anyway,
I'm
pardon
definitely
my
boost your mood.
yeah,
Yeah.
pardon my digression, but so okay, so take us back a little bit to your beginnings, and then let us know how you chose this specific niche of late diagnosed autistic adults and introverted professionals, of course.
Yeah, so I struggled with making relationships for my entire life, and I had no idea what the problem was. I was a 90s kid, or I was 80s, born in the 80s, grew up in the 90s, and I watched these TV shows where they were super wholesome, like Family or Full House, Family Matters,
Right.
Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, where everyone just kind of loved on each other. They'd have these little conflicts and little fights, but they would all come back together. They would smile at the end of the 30-minute shows, and I just wanted that, but thought there was something wrong with me
Yeah.
because I couldn't get it and I didn't know how to do it. And so um I was able to get a scholarship to go to college, and I left college and it put me in a whole new scenery, like a completely different place. And going to that place, I thought, well, all I had to do was move from one place to the next because I had heard that all you need to do is find your tribe or find your people. And so
Right.
if I move from my hometown to this college, I'm going to find my people there because I had no success at my hometown. And lo and behold, I go to college and I find the same kind of struggle. Like I get along with a few people, I know a few people, but I don't really know anyone deep down inside. I don't know what's going on. I didn't understand. And so I continued on thinking, well, I just need to go find my tribe. And so after I
Yeah.
left college, I went out there into the real world and I still had trouble. And for many, many years, I don't know how I got into romantic relationships, but I guess I lucked up in them. And somebody thought I was attractive, and I had
Oh,
such, such luck, I guess, with it. And so then I found that I still couldn't make friends. Like I still couldn't be close to those people. I had a romantic partner, but we weren't really friends, which
yeah,
was wild. And I didn't think it was a requirement. And so I struggled with making friends up until my late 30s, where I started to get some support and help. Mid 30s, where I started to get some support and help and understand more about my feelings. I went to therapy. And the only reason why I went to therapy this time, I've been a few times, didn't feel like it worked for me, but my partner at the time told me I need to go to a therapist. And I was like, you know what? I guess so. You're right. I'm going because I
well,
thought that they knew the answers and I didn't know the answers. So my my therapist really helped me. They were right. My relationship with them fell apart. And after that relationship, I thought, you know what? I need to make sure that I find real friendships and real relationships before I get into a romantic relationship ever again. I need to make sure I do that so I understand more about that. And so how I get into patterns of possibility was that it's recognizing this pattern of my relationships just falling
right.
apart, friendships, relationships just falling apart. I'm the common denominator. No matter what I do, I'm the common denominator. And going to therapy, I learned about myself, but it didn't give me these actionable steps to really go out there and make friendships. What do I say? Where do I go? What do I do? That was missing. I just
Right.
learned, how do I feel? Which is valid, which is helpful. So I turned my skills. So while I'm learning about myself, I'm also in this profession. I worked as automation specialist and data analytics specialist. So I was really good at tracking patterns and telling stories with those patterns. So the causation, what the forecasting and so forth is a skill that I developed in the professional space. So I took that professional skill and I turned it into something I could use to help myself create relationships with others. So that's how the patterns of possibility was formed. So what do I say? Where do I go? How do I show up in these particular places will give me the results that I'm looking for. So
Yeah, it's
that's
really
what I
what
teach people.
yeah, I love it. And there's so much to unpack there, but we'll start at the last statement because when you described how you help people, it made me think about, in a way, what I do with personal brands, with people and their
Yeah.
brand and their message, and and the whole language of who you are as a brand and as a professional and all of that. And it makes me realize, well, if people just typically struggle with that, struggle with, sometimes the hardest thing to explain is what you do. People say, "What do
Mhm.
you do?" And unless you fit into a certain box, it can be challenging. And I work with people who especially find it challenging because maybe they're innovating in some area or something like that. It's hard to grasp, or it's a hybrid of something. And it really is relatable, this notion of expressing yourself. And the other thing is that when you're seeking friendships, when you're trying to build friendships, I think all of us as younger adults, we're not as developed as we think we are as people. And so those friendships, even, are often like we're just trying to figure out what do they want us to do. There are very headstrong
Yeah.
people who don't who don't care what anybody wants them to do. But then there are a lot of us that are like, we're just, sometimes the term people pleaser is thrown around a little too much, but we're trying to fit the mold of what another person who may be a stronger personality in some ways is wanting us to be,
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely. Yeah, and that's the challenge that I had for a very long time was trying to figure out what other people wanted. And I think that it came from not being validated when I was much younger. Because my observations, like it being, now that I know that I'm autistic, I can look back and it makes sense, it fits. But my observations were just simple observations about what I observed, like, oh, you're upset. And people would
Mhm.
say, no, I'm not upset. And it was wrong. I'm like, okay, well then pointing out what I really think and feel gets me into trouble as a kid. So I'm going to make sure I don't do that because I'm very vulnerable. So I'm going to just make sure I contort myself so that I'm able to figure out what they want. Don't say anything. That's
Yeah.
where introversion, that's where maybe autism, when we're just like, don't say anything, it's going to get me into trouble. It has historically, I recognize this pattern, wait to see what's appropriate, and then I'm going to show up.
Yeah.
That's what I've done. And so we want to be conscious of the fact that, yeah, that's happening, but it doesn't get you far. I mean, you practice and you perform and you do those things until it doesn't feel good to do anymore. You're like, I'm tired of,
Well, it's
okay.
exhausting. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, that's why I use that motto, sell the truth, because it's all we have. And it always goes back to that, that quote that, if you tell the truth, you have less to remember.
Hmm.
You have, if you tell lies, you got to remember what you said. You got to remember your story. And I think that it's so much easier to just be yourself, but it's not easier in the social sense of gaining that confidence, you know?
Hmm. Yeah. And it takes practice because essentially, like I'm thinking about it as a very, like as you are more vulnerable, when you are 20 something years old, you seem to be more vulnerable because your social circle is everything and you can't see anything past that. And if these people don't like you in this moment, even in high school, of course, if these people don't like you in this moment, then you are going to be doomed in a social outcast, maybe for 3 years, but 3 years seems like an eternity for you. And so as you continue on, you realize that, oh man, life is changing from my 20s into my 30s, and who cares if my coworkers don't like me? I actually
Yeah.
have a roof over my head, so I also have like stability, financial stability. So why am I considering so much about whether people think of me? That's ruining my happiness. And so we stop thinking about that as much. We start looking at life as, well, there are more days behind me than there are ahead of me.
Yeah.
So let
Yeah.
me change that. Let me change that. Let me look at the people around and see if I want to make a difference here. I want to make a
Yeah.
change.
Yeah. So another thing was, I heard an interview this morning. I can't remember the name of the author, but there's a book out now called Are You Mad at Me? And we can look up the author after and mention it. But the whole thing was, it came from her childhood trauma of being in a very restrictive, kind of suppressed, angry, environment with her father, and feeling like after every exchange there was this strong possibility that the person would be angry with her.
Mhm.
And it's so relatable, and I feel that as well, where especially if you put on top of that, you know, the autistic spectrum, different dispositions, that we may have, because we're all different, no matter what kind of label or diagnosis is possibly ascribed to us. We are all individuals, and we all have a different combination of personality traits, and it's that fear of, you know it's like agoraphobia, but it's a fear of what people think of us. Every time we come in
Mhm.
contact with someone, we're like, what do they think of us? What did we do wrong?
Yeah.
What did we do wrong? How do you address some of those uh, some of those feelings that may be kind of deeply ingrained in us?
Well, I encourage really people to recognize those feelings for themselves. And like all my clients have gone to therapy because they want to learn more about themselves and have their feelings, understand themselves and their feelings. So, what I always recommend is to be able to not hide from those feelings, but you have to be able to process them in some way. Because if you don't know who you are and how you really show up and what's triggering that, if they're mad at you, if they furrow their eyebrows, maybe they're deep in thought and has nothing to do with you, but you internalize that and you took it on because you have trauma and experiences that say furrowed eyebrows are anger and you did something wrong and it's your responsibility. So you spin out, you try to figure that out, but really it has nothing to do with you and they're not even thinking about you. And so you give away so much of your power and your frustration, and you get frustrated because you feel like people are judging you and hurting you. But really, it's that um, internalized pain that you have that you need to process yourself. And so I recommend my clients talk it out. So when we get to this phase, when they reach me, or at this point of reaching me, they have realized that they have feelings in the first place and that they can express them, and I help them express them with words instead of with actions, like say I'm feeling frustrated and because of this event. And then we explore like, does it really have anything to do with you, or why do you think it has something to do with you? Now, I'm not a therapist, but it really helps in these social situations when you're autistic and you're missing social cues and you're looking and scanning for everything that's happening and you miss that one cue. You miss that
Yeah.
one cue, or someone could have just said it to you and you missed that, or you don't know what it is that you're looking for, so everything seems like it's dangerous. And so we want to figure out what that cue is, what you're expecting in the space, and how to interact with other people in the space.
Yeah. Now transformation is a big part of what you do. It's what you experienced, you know.
Hmm.
You had a career that was, on the upswing essentially, right? We had talked
Yeah.
previously about,
Yes.
where you had gotten promoted, but the personal life, your loneliness was still a challenge. And so a lot of the people you work with presumably are, transformation is still hard. It's one thing if they were, uh, if they knew they were on the spectrum from a very young age. It's another thing to, get to a certain point in life and all of a sudden have a different perspective, both internally and on you.
Yeah, it's absolutely difficult to say the least, to believe you're one thing and then suddenly realize that you're not. If you've seen any kind of transformation that's abrupt like that, it's quite painful. And but also, I like to think of it like Bruce Banner, he was the
Yeah.
Hulk transforming from Bruce Banner to the Hulk. He gets all this muscle mass and he changes color and he has all this power and he does it and it's very painful and he screams along the way. But when he finishes his transformation, he's more powerful and he's able to move through the world in a way that's different. And so recognizing that are, you have these list of characteristics. So many of the people who come to me really don't identify as autistic, and I didn't identify as autistic because I thought autism was a sense of um, behavioral challenges and cognitive disabilities. And I wouldn't necessarily have labeled autism the way it shows up in me. And so having that realization or understanding that these sets of behaviors that you might do, missing social cues, you're unsure about how to show up in special certain places or show up at all, you're unsure if people like you, if you're saying the right thing, you're unsure of how you come off to other people or things like that. You have all of these specific behaviors, but now that you have reached a certain point in your life, you get a label with it. And that label really helps you understand how to move forward and who else to connect with, who else you can connect with. And so it might be very frightening because it was for me at first when you get that diagnosis. And by the way, I'm self-identified or self-diagnosed. Um, when you understand that about yourself, it makes it much easier for you to connect with others when you say, this is who I am. Here's a label. Instead of telling you all the things that I do, oh, sometimes I stim, I listen to music 8 hours, one song 8 hours on repeat, or I eat the same thing over and over again, or I love a strict routine and schedule. Instead of saying all those things about who
Hmm.
you are, you can just say, this is my label. I'm autistic if you choose to put that label upon yourself. You can share with others. I've found that it makes it easier to connect with others when I use that label because they know exactly what behaviors they could expect from me and probably would not expect from me.
So let's say, because also you notice, like even I'm like a little careful around it. I'm not sure, autistic, spectrum. Spectrum always seems to be a word that kind of helps us in a way because it applies across the board to so many different kinds of people. And yet it labels or classifies, but it's often harder for the other person who doesn't know how to classify the person they're talking to. And if the person they're talking to gives themselves a classification or a label, that does kind of make it easier for themselves and for the people they're talking to, and it kind of demystifies and destigmatizes in some way, some of these labels. But but when you but so let's say when you introduce yourself, uh, especially given what you do, what's your intro? Someone you meet someone new.
I I I'm 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 not sure what I got flustered. So I want to come back to this. Yeah, I got flustered. I'm like, do I? Because what I translated your question to was,
Yeah.
do I introduce myself as autistic? Like, I'm Coach Lee, the autistic person.
Yeah, you're
I don't
you're
do that.
yeah.
Yeah.
No. Well, that's the thing. That's your coaching is who you help. So, you know, because I'm thinking about we're just going a little deeper into this idea of how we how we best communicate with one another, with other people. Um,
Oh,
you
okay.
know, and so, I obviously in your intro it's written a certain way, but I just wonder because it doesn't have to play a role in your, when you meet somebody, but
Yeah.
you
I
mentioned when you give yourself a label. So it's like when does it come up? I guess that would be like the best way to for me to put it. When does it come up?
Oh, okay. I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Depending, of course, it depends on the situation, but man, I just don't like when people say depends on the situation. But let's look at the professional space and let's look at the personal space. Like
Yeah.
professionally, if I were in a space and I wanted to talk about the services that I do, I would not talk about being autistic and focusing autistic. Although it's in my profile, although it's in my on my website, I like to talk about my business as I help really smart people make friends.
Hmm.
That's the way I
I
approach
love that.
people. And I I recognize that people understand themselves in that because really smart people also have these characteristics of late identified autistic people because they figured out how to move through the world and they have these pattern recognition skills and they're working in technology and they're working in the library sciences or they're working in the chemical fields and things like that. They're working in sciences. So they've without saying the label late identified autistic, really
Hmm.
smart people make friends. They're struggling with making those relationships that they feel that they should have. And so I go further and I would say as in the professional space, if I were talking about my services, I would then talk about the behaviors and then I would associate the behaviors with autism in myself only if it felt comfortable to bring it up. And there are signs that show that it's comfortable to bring up. And I identify myself as that before I label anybody else. So if I talk about missing social cues and talking about my own experiences and they nod their head to that, and then I say later on, I found out that I'm autistic, and they were like,
Hmm.
oh, but I don't give them that label. I just say, this is me. Does it look like you? This is how I label.
Yeah.
And
What do you think? Yeah.
yeah,
What do you
if
think?
it fits for you, then pick it up. If it doesn't, then it doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so in the personal space, I don't go around telling people that, well, yes, I do. I'm on a podcast. I go around people telling them I'm autistic all the time.
well,
But
you're
I
not
don't,
anonymous. No,
I'm not
I
anonymous.
think that's why I think the way I put it when I finally got it together the right way, I think I was saying, when does it come up? Like at
Yeah.
what point does it come up? Because that is what it comes down to. But I think, you also mentioned introverted professionals, and it's interesting. I consider myself an ambivert because I like being alone. Like, I don't mind being alone. I get a lot of energy from being alone, whereas, an extrovert might need that crowd to feed their energy. And
Hmm.
I, I respond to the energy of the crowd, but I generally think I draw my energy from my internal solitary experiences. And, and again, that doesn't come up all the time in conversation either.
Right.
Hi, I'm Hirsch. I'm an ambivert, and my personality and my energy from being alone. But the introverted professional is also an interesting
Yeah.
circumstance.
And introverted people aren't socially awkward people. They're not. There's a difference between the
Yeah,
two. Introverted people really just want to be by themselves and recharge and have energy by being by themselves. And socially awkward people tend to believe that everybody hates them and they're annoyed with them and frustrated with them. And those
right.
two just aren't the same. Introverts can have really high self-esteem and really self-worth and not consider or care about those things. The
Absolutely.
way I would help introverts is help them understand a little bit about moving the conversation to ways they want to move in conversation. So I imagine an introvert would enter a conversation, a room full of people, and be annoyed with somebody's conversation or be annoyed with the topic and just say, "Oh, I'm done. I'm going to leave the conversation because I don't have my energy for this." But
Hmm.
instead, we like to redirect the conversation to see if they would lead the conversation about something that's interesting to them. So, in case they're not interested in leading, they don't know how to lead the conversation or steer the conversation, we work with tools to help them steer the conversation to what's important to them because there might be something great there and just that one topic to discuss, but not just, oh, I got to reserve. I'm tired of masking or I'm
Right.
tired of pretending in this conversation. I got to get away. But instead, let's figure out if we can guide the conversation to what feels good to us, and then we can get that boost in the conversation by sharing our shared interests with others.
Yes. Yeah, lots to discuss in this field of education, actually, of the societal education. But you have some stuff coming up, some stuff you're working on. I wanted
Oh
to hear
yeah.
a little bit about it.
Yeah, so I struggled with making meaningful relationships all my life, and that's probably the most said sentence that I've ever said in my entire life. But now things are changing. Things have changed for me as I've discovered by understanding more about being autistic that there are many adults out there who live my same experience. And so I have the Social Connection Summit coming up in September, September 24th and September 25th. It's for late identified autistic and ADHD professionals who struggle with making real relationships. And that's professionals at work who are struggling to build relationships with their coworkers, to get along with their managers, or if you're a manager and you're struggling to help your team, if you're neurodivergent or not, it's meant to help bridge the gap between um those who are ADHD, ADHD, and autistic late diagnosed professionals with those who are not and working in the workplace. And so what's the setup? The main preface, the main understanding here is that, we're having a conversation, me being autistic and you not, having a conversation and bridging the gap with communication. And I would like to create an environment like that for others. So there have long been told that autistic people miss social cues. We're missing the
Mm-hmm.
social cue. Everybody in the room got it, but we didn't get it. But I'd like to flip that on its head and say, well, you know what? My manager missed my social cue. They missed the cue for me because they didn't know what to look for.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that there are a lot of managers out there because I worked in the tech space and there I had some managers who really wanted to help me. And I just didn't know how to be helped. I didn't know what I needed. And they felt a bit of shame about trying to say the right thing. They didn't want to get it wrong. So we want to create this space where managers or supervisors, neurodivergent or not, can come into the space and learn how to better manage, understand without shame or guilt or embarrassment. And those who are neurodivergent are able to come into the space and learn to advocate for themselves. What do they need? Like bullying at work, at the workplace because they're saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing or they're stimming or whatnot. What can you do to ask for support or advocate for yourself? So we want to have those conversations, those hard conversations, but also in a genuine, earnest way. So 2 days full of amazing speakers. I've got a TEDx speaker. We've got TEDx speaker. We've got also um, a psychologist therapist who talks about neuroinclusion, wrote a book on it. We also have a live exercise to bridge the empathy gap, which is phenomenal. I can't believe I got the speaker
Mm-hmm.
because I attended her event. I attended one of her sessions and I've never felt so seen as an autistic professional. And
Wow.
I I just know it's going to be amazing. So it's free. It's absolutely free as well. Absolutely free. Just want
That's
as many
great.
people as possible to feel the connection and meet new people and make real change.
And just a simple clarification, this is virtual. This is
Yes,
a virtual event.
it's virtual and I didn't tell you where to go. You can go to
Yeah.
socialconnectionsummit.com to get your free ticket. It's virtual, 100% virtual. Socialconnectionsummit.com, April 20,
4th, September 24th.
September 24th and 25th.
Yeah, September.
I act like I don't want anybody to come to this event. I'm
Well, you may
not.
have to do another event in April of 2026, a follow-up event since you announced it.
Oh,
Yeah. And before we go, one other thought was, so for something like the Social Connection Summit, what is the difference between, let's say, late diagnosed adult autism and someone who was diagnosed, as a child?
I think
Meaning
that,
in terms of something like this, in terms
and
of the
yeah, in
summit.
terms of something like this, I think that a lot of people who have been diagnosed early have support. And a lot of resources are going into how to be better with social skills and behavioral things like that. And we don't quite get that if we're masking and late diagnosed. We kind of figure it out for ourselves, and we end up realizing that, what we've put together, what we duct taped together, these little pieces of what's acceptable and what isn't, and how to show up in life is just falling apart. When you're at that stage when you are diagnosed and like, oh, now it makes sense. I can rip it all down. But what do I do? Like, how do I start building this up? And so when you come to the space, you are in the space where you didn't know what you didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And you're getting more information about how the world can work for your benefit, how you can use your skills and work for your benefit and get the best out of it, get the most out of it. So the difference is that you felt unsupported for most of your life. And now here in this space, you're getting understanding about what's going on with you and finding real support.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Coach Lee.
You
This
know,
was great.
it was a lot of fun, Hirsch. I really appreciated it. Such great questions had me thinking and moving my head quite a bit.
My pleasure. Well, and so we have the socialconnectionsummit.com, but is there another site for you for people to check you out?
Oh yeah, if you want to catch up with me, if you want to learn more about what I do as a social connections coach, you can find me at patternsofpossibility.com. You can book a call with me, have a conversation, or you can grab some of my free stuff. I have a podcast that I release every Tuesday as well, and I also have one of those a free a freebie that I think a lot of people would love, or ha a lot of people have loved. It's about following up. So if you're struggling with following up in conversations, don't want to be awkward or weird, I'll give you a step-by-step guide. It's absolutely free. You don't even have to enter your email address. You just go to my page and you download it. It's under resources. So go to patternsofpossibility.com, go into resources, grab that resource, and it's all yours.
Thanks so much for tuning into Truth Tastes Funny. If you enjoyed the experience, please leave a 5-star review and share this podcast with your friends.